Welcome back, everybody. Just like we're back, so is the Iran war. We'll get into that and why I don't think it's going to stop even as we go into 2027 as it relates to the bill I mentioned on Wednesday, the S.4784 bill. And then we will take a look at how many times we have been told this Iran war is going to stop. And then we're going to finish the episode off with looking at The Committee of 300, the book by John Coleman that I've been referencing to throughout many of these videos, and just how many things within the news today relate to his 21-point plan that he mentioned in his book, how they're intentionally trying to destroy the United States. So let's get into it, guys. This is my second time recording. Hopefully it's better. So I'm not sure if you stayed up to date on the fact that the Iran war has now continued. They were talking about the 14-point plan, and notice how the 14-point plan, the peace deal, happened right when it's the holidays, and then the gas prices go down by like 50 cents for maybe 2 weeks just so the economy can boost again and some more, and then everyone seems happy when really they're not, but it's just because of the holidays. And it kind of happened when Pam Bondi was giving her speech in Congress, just so when she could say that the gas prices were lower, they were lower only for the week or two when she was making that statement at Congress, which is just, crazy and shows you how much control they have. However, I want to point out how it seems like if you look at this article in the small print here, that America is actually the one who may have overreacted or retaliated in maybe an unfair manner, as it says that there were attacks made by Tehran. Who knows how true that is, considering every time that they say there's some massive attack, then they retaliate by obliterating and abolishing their whole existence like they did in Gaza. And so I just want to mention how the Iran war, they've stated that it was going to stop 39 times now. Really, I believe this is actually the 40th. And it's like, who knows if this is the 38th, the 39th, or 40th. Either way, it's 38 times too many, as CNN has said it was 38 times, and that was a few weeks ago. And so now it seems kind of like the same thing that, oh yeah, we're talking a peace deal. Are you though? This brings me to why I believe that the Iran war, all of this is just for show, maybe even to distract us from the S.4784 bill in the first place, because on page 835, it says, when it's talking about development of cognitive warfare strategy, that on point 2, it says an assessment of the cognitive warfare threat landscape, including the cognitive warfare threat posed by China, Russia, Iran, and other adversaries as appropriate, as well as their capabilities, tactics, and techniques, and strategic objectives, which again, it's like they're still trying to demonize, or it seems that they're still trying to strategize against Iran and assuming that Iran is still going to be a threat in 2027. And this is why I don't believe that the war will actually be over, and who knows how long it will actually go on, because if they're still discussing Iran as it being a threat and needing to make sure they strategize against it, well, then it's like, is it really going to be over? And considering we've been told almost 40 times now, I'm just going to say 40 times, since we've been told now 40 times that there would be peace between Iran and the US, it seems like it's never going to happen. Even the United Nations finds this war to be a very serious violation of human rights. As they say on their website, related to the school bombing that happened a few months ago, if you remember, when the girls' school, or just the school in general, was hit by a precision Tomahawk U.S. airstrike. And again, if it's so precise, it's like, was that really an accident? And it killed over 120 children. And this is what the United Nations had to say relating to it. The UN Education Agency says that the bombing of a primary school during the US and Israeli military attacks on Iran on Saturday constitutes a grave violation of humanitarian law. Now, notice the fact that they're mentioning the US and Israeli. And as I mentioned, the bill is trying to tie the Israeli military with the United States military. And I find this bill concerning for a whole nother reason in itself. It's kind of one of those situations where they admit to something, but they kind of don't. If you see on page 167, it says on point 5 that the Committee on Armed Services of the Senate and the House of Representatives unredacted civilian harm investigations, including all relevant supporting documents for the strikes on, and it lists off a few places, but one of those places at the very bottom, it says the Minab Girls' School in Iran on February 28, 2026. So it's like, I don't believe that there's been any apology, but they're like, yeah, well, we're going to investigate it, but we're still not going to apologize, even though it was a precise Tomahawk missile or whatever those missiles were even called. I saw on a news channel that it said Tomahawk, so I'm like, okay, that's why I'm saying that. But I'm no pro when it comes to that and don't really care to be. Either way, that part was just also alarming because it's like, oh wow, so yeah, you're kind of admitting to that because it was in a section where it's relating to certain funds are going to be, I guess, limited for the Secretary of Defense until those actions happen. And that point 5 about the school and investigating what happened there is one of the points to need to be done. Like I said, this is pretty serious considering this is for the 2027 military budget. And this is why I recommend at least look into this bill in some way, and if there's something that you're not in favor of or that you find to be against the Constitution or it doesn't support the American people, which is a lot of portions in the bill, well then I think it's important to email your senators, as I've mentioned before, and try to motivate and or persuade them to vote no on this bill or even amend it and put forth proposals to take certain sections out. And as I mentioned in Wednesday's video, you can see how to do that. But then, last point or topic of today is the things mentioned in the Committee of 300, the book by John Coleman, which I've been mentioning all throughout these videos. And as I said, I just think it's shocking to see how much of many of the things he said today are now in place. Even though he said that in his book already, he said much of these goals, which I first enumerated in 1969, have since been achieved or are well on their way to being achieved. And yes, we're still well on our way on our journey. First off, the point he makes is the one world government, and he said not many people are aware that the one world government began setting up its church in the 1920s to 1930s, for they realized they need for a religious belief inherent in mankind to have an outlet and therefore set up a church body and to channel that belief in the direction they desired. When I read this, it actually reminded me of this TV series called The Great, because in that TV series, there is a patriarch. And the patriarch realizes that he is necessary or a necessity to the king and the queen, regardless of who was in reign, because the people would think without his approval that they were demonic. And it also brings me to how I believe there's manipulation in the church today, and that much of the church is manipulation, like how many of the pastors will not want you to examine them or look into what they're saying, or they think that you're not allowed to speak correction. However, if they're really being Christ-like, which I think is the whole point of if you're trying to have a church or be godly or even give a message about God, is you should be open to examination just like Jesus was, because he wouldn't get threatened when people would ask him questions. But nowadays, everyone seems so like, I can't believe you would ask me that. No, you're not allowed to. No, I'm your shepherd. You're not supposed to ask me questions. Well, Jesus never acted that way, so why are you when you're the one claiming to be of Jesus? Then that brings me to the next topic is the utter destruction of all national identity and national pride. Now, mind you, this is a hot topic right now, and I feel always has been, but related to ICE and the deportation efforts. And mind you, I say this not with the fact that I'm agreeing to everything that everyone says or that everyone does in the ICE department. However, I do believe, and it is fact, that it is a crime based on the law 8 USC 1325 and 1326 that it is illegal to enter the country just as is. I mean, I'm sure other countries have laws too, and people are wanting America to bend this law, but if you bend one, then how many others do you have to bend? And then how do you even have a justice system if you're wanting one law to not apply and then the next you do want it to? That's not justice, that's just bias. And so I think that's kind of a form of it because everyone is fighting over ICE and it reminds me of COVID, but instead we could then be looking at, okay, this is all tactics intentionally brought forth to keep us distracted from noticing anything of value. And also, to that second point as well, demonizing nationalism. I do not believe there is anything wrong with nationalism as long as it obviously doesn't turn into a radical Hitler like movement, which this is not the case right now, even though everyone's trying to exaggerate it at the moment. But obviously Hitler was bad. It shouldn't even need to be said. And if you're a Hitler lover, well, something's wrong with you. But I think to say that nationalism is a horrible thing, I don't believe that's true, because if you look at the definition, it's pretty much just having loyalty to your country, which is like America first. When you're actually caring about, are our cities safe? Are they getting better? And no, they are not. You know, the economy is getting worse in every state. Homelessness is increasing along with, you know, drug crises and many other issues, and just being unclean. And then the third point that he mentions is the destruction of religion, and more especially the Christian religion, with the one exception, their own creation mentioned above in point one about how they're trying to make their own religion. But this brings me to how it says the destruction of Christianity, and that is definitely happening with the wars that are going on currently in Lebanon, and how they are fighting what always seems to be Christians, or trying to demonize Catholics, Christians, or whatever it be. If they're actually of Jesus, well, then they say it's bad. Just like when the whole movement went about saying Christ is king, and then now everyone's a Hitler lover, and it's like, what? How does that even say the same thing? It definitely doesn't. And then it makes you wonder, okay, why are they demonizing it? Just like the same thing. If they really thought Jesus was a mythical god, then why are they not teaching him when it comes to mythology in school, just like they do with all the other gods, the false gods? But he is real. And then it brings me to point 4, where it says control of each and every person through means of mind control, and what Brzezinski calls technotronics, which would create human-like robots and a system of terror. Now, mind you, this actually made me think of Erica Kirk, because many people are noticing how weird her body language is, especially her eyes. And it actually reminds me of this video I seen of this guy uncovering and discussing the mind control. And there is a video of this woman on the stage of Congress, like talking, and she was seeming to be saying what the person on the podium was saying. And when she misspoke, she had to lean forward real fast and correct. If you're interested, this is the video. You should check it out because it's really weird. That also makes me think about MK Ultra, but how they're trying to hide that. But thank goodness there's actually someone trying to uncover those files and persecute those people right now, as I've also mentioned in a previous video, that they're trying to uncover MK Ultra. Now brings me to the fifth point, and mind you, I will only go to 7 points, and then I will talk a little bit about this point that I mentioned in Wednesday's video so I can relate it to today. And the fifth point is an end to all industrial and the production of nuclear generated electric power in what they call the post industrial zero growth society. And it says the United States industries that remain will be exported to countries such as Mexico, where abundant slave labor is available. Now, this is like when in January, Trump signed an executive order quadrupling beef imports from Argentina. And that feels very similar. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that Mexico is the same as Argentina. I just think that it's interesting because we're going down south where the labor is cheaper or people are willing to work, and or creating the beef is cheaper, and it's putting the farmers here in America out of work, or they are not getting, they already were struggling, but now it's getting harder. And I'm not saying that's the same case for every farmer, because I have met some farmers that seem very well off, but that's how it seems. It doesn't mean it's always that's the case. Just because like some people can have money, but it's actually just a front. Anyway, yeah, that makes me think of how, as mentioned in the beginning of this book, that there's a group of people intentionally trying to destroy the agriculture of the United States as well. And the fifth point also has like a third point in the fifth point, and he says unemployables in the wake of the industrial destruction will either become opium, heroin, and or cocaine addicts. And yes, that does seem to be the case as you look at many of the streets in the big cities such as California and Skid Row, or Colorado and Denver. And it just seems, and I've seen it firsthand myself as I stay in Colorado, and this is just, it is saddening to see so many people like this. And it actually makes me think that that TV series Snowfall was a documentary, not just a TV series. The sixth point is that Coleman states is part of the destruction is legalization of drugs and pornography. Now, notice on this graph that in the United States, marijuana has become legal in many places. But what I find interesting is places where marijuana isn't legal, it might not necessarily mean that actual weed is legal, but they have, all the alternatives like Delta, A, T, C, and the whole alphabet there. And I know that because I used to smoke and I had gotten those from Kansas. And it says that Kansas is one of the states that does not sell marijuana. However, it sells very synthetic marijuana that seems very similar to actual marijuana. And then with the pornography, you have people like this Emily lady advertising it and glorifying it when really it's satanic, and it's honestly a bad thing for men and women. When women are out here thinking that it's a good thing to just promote their body, it's really devaluing you. And also for men, they see you as devalued when you're doing that. And also it weakens men, porn weakens men and makes them like simps for women, and see women as just some flesh, some body to use to get their purpose off. And that is just, really hurting, I think, the bond between men and women. And instead of having a single relationship or marriage, it seems like everyone's just trying to always have affairs, and divorce rates are high, and it's very saddening and hard to trust anyone. The seventh point is the depopulation of large cities according to the trial run carried out by Pol Pot regime in Cambodia. It is interesting to note that Pol Pot's genocidal plans were drawn up here in the United States by one of the Club of Rome's research foundations, and that the committee, which is the Committee of 300, is presently seeking to reinstate Pol Pot butchers in Cambodia. And I'm still going to have to do some research on that because there's honestly so many tangents in this book. It's wild. And if you can see on this map here that there is a depopulation, and actually it looks like there's coming a population collapse, because people are not getting married as soon as they should, or not even having children as soon as they should. And yes, people could call me a hypocrite because I don't technically have that box checked yet, but doesn't mean I don't want it. It just means that I am not there yet. I mean, not that I haven't tried, but that's a whole nother thing. Not your business. And just like nacho chips. And anyway, so nacho chips about me. Um, yeah, and so the depopulation agenda is definitely concerning, and it does seem like with the Global 2000 plan they are trying to achieve, it looks like based on this graph that it's going to happen, because with the Global 2000 plan that they are trying to get rid of at least 3 billion useless eaters is what they call us, referred to by Coleman. And mind you, he's not saying that, he is quoting them, the elitists, the committee of 300, the people at the top. And the only other point that I would make, and I will address this later, but I'm going to break these 21 points into 3 different points. This point 13 says to continue to build up the cult of Christian fundamentalism begun by the British East India Company's servant Darby, which will be misused to strengthen the Zionist state of Israel through identifying with the Jews through the myth of God's chosen people, and by donating very substantial amounts of money to what they mistakenly believe is a religious cause. Mind you, I mentioned in one of my previous episodes as well about that Nathan Epiphel guy raising the alarm on the fact that the churches are becoming a business model. This seems to be like that, but also this point number 13 relates back to what I'm saying about the Israeli and the United States coming together, and it's shown in that document, the bill S.4784, and I just think it's very alarming considering this is their plan. And so we definitely need to fight their plan, because this is not, again, about the Jews, even though that's what they are going to use it for, clearly as stated here. And as we can see all over the news, that people are just deemed an anti-Semite for simply asking any questions related to Israel or even stating the topic. But I'm glad that more people are talking about it now and being not so fearful, because it's like, who cares about these people? Because what matters is what we stood up for in the next life. And with all that being said, I still urge you all to message your senators, especially if they are, to message your senators, because they are able to vote no on this bill, the S.4784 bill, and you can try to persuade them or change their minds and let them know that, hey, I am a member of I'm a congregant, and I have a right to say this piece, and give a valid reason why you believe that this bill they should say no on, or a certain portions of the bill that they should completely redact altogether. And with that, I hope you all enjoyed this video. It might be a bit long, but I hope you're getting something out of it. And I thank you for joining me again, and that we continue down this journey of change and realizing the importance without just only having feelings at the forefront, because forget all that. I'm sure everyone's tired of that happening, and I know that I sure am. Have a great day, everybody, and thank you for joining the Hint Show. Bye.